Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series The Human from a Dungeon. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 28 Nick Smith, Adventurer Level 5, Human American. We waited for a few minutes in the back of the cart before Imlaw finally came out to the back door of his house. It was an interesting building, a shop attached to the side of his house. The only door on the front I'd seen was for the shop. So maybe this was the front door of his house. That makes sense if he normally parks his carts back here. The harnesses were tied to the carts and attached to a stake. They didn't react at all when we'd approached. But I get the feeling that if we tried to pet them, we'd regret it immediately. There was a stable next to the back of the shop, which must be where they sleep. It looked a lot better than the stables I'd seen back on Earth, like someone paid a lot of money for its construction. Imlaw untied the reins from the stake and patted each harness on the head. "Are you good?" Nash asked, referring to the unexpected wait. "Yeah, saying goodbye to the missus," Imlaw answered as he climbed into the driver's seat. "She's justifiably worried about my health." "I wouldn't say justifiably," Nash chuckled. "We've got 3 tough guards to watch your back." "True enough. But as you said before, I'm somewhat of a monster magnet," Imlaw chuckled. "No matter how tough my guards are, there's a chance that something might hit me from out of nowhere." "Yeah, but York knows how to heal, so it'll work out." "Assuming it doesn't kill him immediately," York added. "Magic can heal, but it can't bring back the dead. Well, not as they were at any rate." "Speaking of the dead," I said, "if vampires exist, what about zombies and other stuff like that?" As the cart began moving, York and Nash stared at me. I suppose it hadn't occurred to them that I was ignorant of such things. Nash sighed, but York grinned, likely excited by his chance to give a lecture. "Shambling corpses, ghouls, and most other monsters that relate to the death of mortals are all magical beings that have been corrupted by death in one way or another. There is magic to create such fiends, but thankfully it's relatively rare and very looked down upon," York explained. "If Nash were to die and I raise again as a zombie, I wouldn't hesitate to destroy his fetid corpse. Do you know why?" "Because it wouldn't be Nash anymore," I guessed. "Correct," he said gleefully. "And Nash would have passed on to whatever awaits in the afterlife. What would then be inhabiting his corpse would be nothing more than a corrupted magical being, one that, presumably, I've never met, and as such feel no attachment to." "What sort of magical being would that be?" "There are too many different magical beings to classify them all, and most of them have the ability to possess dead flesh. Both fairies and the fae, for instance, are able to do so. When a fairy possesses a corpse, it becomes a zombie. When a fae possesses one, it becomes a ghoul. However, this doesn't mean that every zombie used to be a fairy and every ghoul used to be a fae." "What is a ghoul exactly?" I asked. "Where I come from, they're creatures that hang out in graveyards and eat the rotting flesh from corpses." "That's almost the exact opposite of what ghoul is here," York laughed. "Ghouls are mutated corpses that crave the flesh of the living like a zombie does, but are much better equipped to get it than a zombie is. Faster, smarter, and much stronger. Thankfully, they hunt solo most of the time, and do so by ambushing those who wander too far from safety of numbers." "Ghouls don't actually need to eat, so they're very patient pests," Nash added. "How do you kill one?" "The corrupted magical being that is reanimating the corpse resides in the brain and controls its functions with magic," York said. "As such, the only way to terminate an undead is decapitation, or to apply extreme cerebral trauma. Fire would technically work, but only because it performs the latter method of extermination." "And vampires?" "Vampirism is a tricky one, technically. When a mer is turned into a vampire, their magical core is merged with a corrupted magical being, and they in turn become a new type of magical being. By far and large, they retain their identity and memories, as well as the use of any and all skills they possessed while they were alive." York hesitated. "If Nash were to rise again as a vampire, I would hesitate to end him, or re-end him, I suppose." "Why is that?" "Vampires don't have to be evil," Nash said. "There's been tales of vampire heroes who fought alongside mortals to put an end to those who would destroy life as we know it." "Which makes the choices that most vampires decide upon all the more tragic," York added. There is a great deal of trauma that goes into becoming a vampire, and the immediate surge in power afterwards is too much for most minds to bear. Wanting others to join you in suffering is a very common trait amongst mortals, and vampires are in a rather unique position to accomplish exactly that.
It doesn't help that shitheads vamps purposely recruit other shitheads, Nash grumbled. Societal leeches becoming literal leeches is all that is. Do you kill them by decapitating them? I asked. Nash and York shared a look.
I am afraid that it is not as simple as that, York explained. Since they have become magical beings, they are not limited to their flesh like we are. One must bind them to the flesh through spellcraft or by divine grace, and then entirely destroy their body. Decapitation will help in that regard, but the entire body must be destroyed, or the head will simply grow back, or the body will grow back from the head.
They have insane regeneration abilities, especially if they've recently fed, Nash added. Even if you chop them up into little bits, and you can still regrow their flesh from one of those bits, it's best to bind them, lob off the head, and incinerate the immediate area entirely.
Do they actually drink people's blood? I asked. Like, can't they drink animal blood?
No, they have to drink the blood of mortals. It's the only thing that will provide them sustenance. They can pretend to be immortal by eating and drinking normal food, but they pass that food in the way that one would expect of a mortal. But they slowly starve unless they drink the blood of mortals, Yuk said. The aforementioned vampiric heroes had people willingly give them blood, usually a lover or a friend, and didn't take more than they absolutely needed. How do you lot know so much about vampires? Imla asked, sounding a little unnerved.
It's an interesting subject, Nash replied defensively. Might have to fight one someday. Wasn't all that long ago that they ruled the kingdom of night, you know.
A few generations now, anyways. I learned most of what I know from the works of Imla the Grand's tomes on the subject, York chuckled. Ah, Imla the Grand. Now that's an interesting subject, Imla said. Didn't know he knew a lot about vampires, though. Towards the end of his life, he became a little obsessed with immortality, as most magic wielders do, York explained. The experiments he did on captured vampires were more than a little disturbing.
Ah, I don't want to hear any of that, then, Imla interrupted.
I'd rather the mental image I have of my namesake remained unsullied, if you don't mind. I don't mind at all, York chuckled.
Hey, 10, are we on speaking terms again? I thought to my AI companion.
What do you want? It replied curtly.
Do you think that a vampire would be able to turn me into one?
Definitely not. Your magical core is artificial, and as such cannot be corrupted by outside influences like a natural magic core can. Your blood also has several differences from the blood of Myr. So it's not even clear whether it could be utilized as a source of sustenance by a vampire.
So they wouldn't even be able to drink my blood?
There isn't anything about your blood that would physically prevent them from ingesting it. It's unknown whether it would grant sustenance to a vampire, though. I suppose it would either be disgusting or a delicacy.
Before I could ask 10 anything further, the cart stopped in front of a very impressive building. Its construction was primarily polished stone that had a dark grey coloration, with wooden details and pillars holding up the roof. The wood had a red tinge to it and stood out against the grey walls. Nash and York respectfully hopped and climbed out of the cart, with Imla and I soon following. As we approached the building, I noticed slight seams in the stonework, as if they had polished massive chunks of stone and stacked them on top of each other. Nash pushed open one of the massive double doors and gestured for us to enter, which we did. I nodded a thank you at him as I passed, to which he grunted. It was unclear whether he was annoyed or appreciative.
I'm going to the quartermaster's dugout, Imlark said. Meet me there if you're done first. Understood, replied York. York began to approach the front desk and we followed him. Nash leaned up against the counter as an elven woman wearing a long-sleeved shirt and a vest appeared from the door in the back. Hello there. How can I help you today? She asked with a smile.
Her smile nearly faltered when she saw me, but her professionalism kicked in. It was obvious that she wanted to ask about me, but decided against it. We would like to get his level tested, Nash gestured at me.
Certainly, just a moment.
She reached under the counter and pulled out an intricately carved wooden box, which she then opened. She took a machine that looked like the one from the Noluvian Adventurers Guild and set it on the counter. A shiny black box with 6 legs made of different metals, gold, silver, copper, and I couldn't tell what the other 3 were. One was probably platinum, and the other 2 were strange. One had a deep blue coloration, and the other had a light pink color to it. "Your guild card, please," she smiled. "I have his guild card right here," York said as he passed her my card. He'd held onto it for me while I had my physical and had forgotten to ask for it back. Just as well. It might fall out of my pocket during a fight or something. The elf plugged a card into the slot that was facing us and put her fingers into some holes on her side of the box. A bright blue light shone from the top of the box and gathered itself into a perfect square. Green lights soon followed, creating a handprint as well as characters that I couldn't read on the blue square. The blue and green lights hardened into something that looked a lot like stained glass. The elf removed her fingers from the box and inserted some papers where her hand had been. "Please place your hand on the handprint until you feel a slight electric shock," she smiled. Slight electric shock, my ass. When Nima had said that to me, I'd expected something like a static shock. What actually happened was a jolt of electricity shoving its way through my hand and up my arm. I grit my teeth and placed my hand firmly on the damned print. My hand started shaking in anticipation of the shock, but it didn't come. I took a deep breath and managed to hold my hand still, pressing it into the print. I felt a slight tingle traveling up my arm, but still couldn't tell if it was electricity or just my nerves, traumatized by my previous experience. I opened my mouth to ask about it. When it happened, I shouted as a bolt of electricity shot out my elbow and arced to the floor. York and Nash and the elf all leapt back as I sank to my knees, holding my now injured arm. "What the hell was that?" Nick shouted. I don't know," the elf stammered. "I've never seen it do that before." "Are you all right, Nick?" York asked, leaning down to check on me. "That freaking hurt," I said as I squeezed my eyes shut to prevent tears from making an appearance. I felt something odd in my mind. It wasn't a sound, but a sort of feeling, one that you get when you're giggling maniacally. It took me a second to realize what it was. "Was that you?" I asked Ten, trying very hard to make my inner dialogue sound angry. "No, but I didn't stop it," Ten continued laughing. "Serves you right. That could have killed me." "Not at that voltage," I explained. "It wasn't even close to lethal. Painful, absolutely. But since you want to be independent, from now on I'll just stop the things from killing you. You can figure out how to deal with pain yourself." I was getting really tired of this, but I knew better than to blow up at it. That would just make it angrier, and it wasn't like Ten didn't have many other ways to make my life miserable. Instead, I opted for diplomacy. "Look, Ten, I'm sorry. I should have talked things out with you before the fight happened." "You're damn right you should have," Ten interrupted. "I know it was frightening. And my unexpected resistance must have absolutely made it even more so," I continued. "I understand that you're just stuck with me as I am stuck with you, and it was stubborn and foolish of me not to take that into account." "Correct." "Neither of us asked for the situation, and I shouldn't treat you like you're to blame. I'm sorry." York gently grabbed my uninjured arm and pulled me to my feet. "Apology accepted," Ten said. "The reason that happened is because the stats reader takes some of your mana to determine your current skills and spells, and then returns it. However, your new incorporeal helmet is passively boosting your mana output. The excess energy was the return." "How do I keep it from happening every time?" I asked. "You don't need to. I can stop it from happening by tightening your channels so the flow is closer to your norm. However, learning to control your mana flow better wouldn't hurt." "Are you okay?" the elf asked. "Yeah, sorry about that. I got a new enchanted helmet, and it increased my mana flow without my knowledge," I answered. "Is the extra mana going to interfere with the results of the stats reader?" I quickly asked Ten. "No. It only takes the mana to determine your skills and spells. The amount of mana you have is determined separately by Kuragard through unknown means." "Helmet?" she asked, looking at my hair. "This," Nash said, as he swung a fist at my head. I didn't even get the chance to duck before Ares suddenly appeared on my head and rang like a bell as Nash's fist struck it. I reeled back, and Nash sucked in a breath as he waved his now injured hand. I found my footing and tried to shake the ringing out of my head as York chuckled. "Serves you right, Nash," he said, "sucker punching a seemingly defenseless child. Shame on you." "I was just a demonstration of the helmet's ability to appear when its wearer is in danger." Nash massaged his hand. "I hardly call it a sucker punch." I felt my head and found that Ares had disappeared once again. It occurred to me that I have no way to remove the helmet if it keeps disappearing on me like this. I felt a bit of panic before I realized that since I don't feel the helmet on my head until it's needed, there's really no reason for me to have to take it off. Still, I wish I'd known that it would be a permanent addition when I'd first tried it on.
Right, the elf said, remembering her professionalism. Well, here are the results.
She handed my guild card back to me, and I looked at it. Some of the characters have changed, but I still had no idea what it said. Yuk looked over my shoulder and let out a low whistle. I handed the card to him as Nash raised an eyebrow. "What's it say?" he said.
Level 10,
Yuk said with an uncharacteristically deadpan tone. "What?" Nash shouted. "No fucking way!" "Gotcha," Yuk started laughing. "He's level 7. God, you should see your face." "You're not funny," Nash said, utterly failing to convince our brother, who continued to laugh uproariously.
2 levels.
I got a few new skills and practiced my fighting a bit, but I was under the impression that levels were hard to attain.
What happened?
Nash noticed my confusion. "Probably something to do with 10, he said, pushing me to the side. "Move over. I want to test mine."
"Oh, certainly," the elven lady said. "Guild card, please."
Nash looked at Yuk, who was doubled over, with tears in his eyes. After a few seconds of this, Nash cleared his throat. While continuing to laugh, Yuk reached into his robe, produced another metal card, and handed it to Nash. Nash turned back to the elf and gave her the card.
10. Why did I jump up 2 levels?
I asked while Nash put his hand on the handprint. The level system has a lot of difficulty to account for variables. However, once I was activated, I took the liberty of optimizing your magic core, which has both made it easier for you to cast spells and increase your base mana. This, combined with the new skills you've gained, is likely the reason. "I'm afraid I can't read, and my normal narrator is currently indisposed," Nash said, gesturing to York, who was still hunched over and laughing. "Could you tell me my level?"
"Certainly. You're level 9, she smiled. "Congratulations."
"Thank you so much," Nash smirked at me.
Yulk coughed a bit to calm his laughing fit. Yes, congratulations, brother. 1 level closer to marrying Nima."
"That's, Nash said, turning a slightly darker green. Blushing? "That's not the point. I was trying to point out that I learned some new skills, too."
"I know," York chuckled. "Let's go see Imla to get our weapons. We need to hit the road."
"What new skills did you learn, Nash?" I asked as we walked towards the quartermaster dugout. He turned to make eye contact with me and gave me the type of grin that can only be described as evil. "Oh, you'll see." End of chapter. I would just like to thank the T5 supporters: Bushmaster 117, Casper Arnholtz, Dragzoon W.R.E, Elijah Silvercross, Gray, Jon Creighton, and Sevaren Serberous. Thank you very much.